Hello everyone, I am Dante Nguyen, and today I would like to present my research about the relative age effect and its implications on our education system. Specifically, I set out to investigate how does being older or younger compared to classroom peers affect subsequent adult success and satisfaction in their careers. However, before I explain my research or experimental design, I want to emphasize the impact the relative age effect has in a better documented field, athletics. The relative age effect is a very intuitive term that describes a bias toward older individuals in a competitive setting. Let's say, for example, in a junior football league, the earliest time to apply was in January and the youngest time to apply was 9 years old. As visualized, those born in January on the cusp of turning 10 years old are the oldest one in their football league age bracket. With that relative age comes better physical coordination and performance. Now, a slight biological advantage at such an age becomes insignificant growing into adulthood. However, the relative age effect describes a bias toward older individuals as a positive feedback loop. An athlete's marginally better skills can lead to success and recognition, which leads to better training and gift opportunities, and thus boosts their performance. Ultimately, this leads to older athletes gaining the majority of gifted opportunities, while younger athletes with underdeveloped skills losing access to those same opportunities. The majority of research concludes that the athletes born at the beginning of the competitive year do garner a competitive advantage just for being older. Those advantages include being less likely to drop out of the sport as a team, being overrepresented at elite level, and being paid more than the younger counterparts. Given the clear significance the relative age effect has on an athlete's ultimate success, I decided to investigate relative age in education. I was surprised to find no literature about relative age in students and their ultimate vocational success and enjoyment. This gap of knowledge concerning relative age and ultimate career outcomes is important because the relative age effect could have serious negative effects for young students. Hence my research question: how does relative age in students correlate with adult vocational self-efficacy and self-esteem? For context, self-efficacy represents an individual's self-evaluated ability to do a task successfully. For example, my background in the violin gives me a high self-efficacy to play music. Vocational self-efficacy is an adult self-evaluated ability to be successful in their career. With no research directly investigating my two variables, relative age and vocational self-efficacy, my literature review consisted of 24 papers that indicated that my variables were related. My first foundational source was published by Professor Francis Lang. His research consisted of analyzing data from the Early Childhood Longitudinal Study Kindergarten Cohort, a federal program that collects statistical education data from near all primary schools in the USA. Professor Huang found that the gifts identification for kids born in the beginning 4 months of the academic year, the oldest, and the youngest 4 months of the academic year, the youngest, were around 4.5% and 3% respectively. Therefore, older students were about 50% more likely to be identified for gifted education compared to a younger counterpart. Professor Huang also stresses that this relationship is heavily mediated by older students' higher academic achievement. Visualized on the graph, as relative age increases, so too do math and reading achievement scores. My second foundational source was published by Professor Ming-Sui Han. His research analyzed the relationship between global self-esteem, academic achievement, and academic self-efficacy. His study surveyed 255 first-year mathematics students who enrolled at learning institutions in the United Arab Emirates. His results found that academic self-efficacy was strongly correlated, with positive self-esteem and academic achievement. In other words, as academic achievement rose, so too do students' self-confidence to be able to be successful in their academic work. Other research in my literature review also indicates that a lower academic self-efficacy is correlated with negative school behaviors, like a student's diminished value in school. Lastly, what brings all of my research together is my final foundational source, the social cognitive career theory developed by Robert W. Lang and his colleagues. Put simply, the social cognitive career theory aims to explain why people choose certain careers and how they become successful in them. Self-efficacy is important because it represents people's self-evaluability to be successful in something, and so heavily affects their goal and career placement. My experimental question comes from applying the social cognitive career theory to relative age in school, careers, and what I've learned in my previous sources. My previous sources indicate that relative age can create academic disparity between younger and older students, which can lead to heightened academic performance and higher academic self-esteem and self-efficacy. If relative age does apply to students and subsequent adults, a possible reason is that an older student's relative maturity equates to higher academic performance, which both increases academic self-efficacy and vocational self-efficacy. What this ultimately leads is that older students attain higher and more satisfying jobs and younger students don't. The existence of this relationship is what my research intends to investigate. To investigate academic relative age and its ultimate effects on adult careers, I employed a survey method to measure participants' self-evaluated characteristics as quantifiable data. The self-evaluated characteristics I chose to record were vocational self-efficacy, academic self-efficacy, global self-efficacy and self-esteem, high school graduation date and age, and participants' demographics. For my research, I relied on Schwarzer's General Self-Efficacy Survey. Schwarzer's survey is well built to measure general self-efficacy, but is not well suited to measure specific kinds. For academic and vocational self-efficacy, I had to adapt Schwarzer's survey to be more high school and career-oriented. In total, I had 12 questions measuring self-efficacy, 4 for each type. Another survey I relied on was Rosenberg's self-esteem survey. Much like Schwarzer's, Rosenberg's survey is also well built to measure general self-esteem. Hence, I used 5 questions directly from the source. I presented all self-evaluated characteristic questions on a 5-point Likert scale, meaning participants were confined to 5 response options: strongly disagree, disagree, neither disagree or agree, agree, and strongly agree. The 5-point Likert scale made converting participants' responses into numeric values easy, which I needed for correlational analysis. I also used a 5-point Likert scale as opposed to a 4-point Likert scale because the added neutral option avoids presenting a false dichotomy that could warp participants' self-evaluations. Finally, I measured high school graduation age and birth age to approximate academic relative age. I also recorded participants' demographics in case other correlations presented themselves. The survey's target demographic was adults who participate in America's compulsory education system. The survey is distributed via email amongst faculty and graduates of a public Missouri school through their alumni network and other professional contacts I had. Participants are chosen through convenience sampling. In other words, all of my participants were anybody who chose to answer my survey. Lastly, I compiled all of my data onto an Excel sheet to be analyzed with correlational analysis. Of the 129 complete surveys I obtained, 68 entries were outside of my research scope. This is because those participant surveys were either incomplete or reported skipping a grade, which my literature review indicates has a negative effect on academic achievement and is outside of the relative age effect. Therefore, I analyzed 61 participant datasets. General characteristics by participants include the slightly higher ratio of younger participants, those 18 and 31-year-old, and the uneven gender ratio. Analyzable survey results were returned by 19 males, 41 females, and 1 alternative identity. I analyzed my data by organizing my participant statistics into 4 contrasting subgroups. My subgroups were gender, what age they graduated high school, their current age, and what month they were born in. It's important to note that the birth months start with August to October because those months denote the beginning of the school year, and therefore theoretically have the oldest participants' birthdays. I first analyzed the mean, median, mode, and standard deviation for all self-evaluated characteristics in all of my subgroups. Mean is the average score of an entire subgroup. It's good for measuring the general self-evaluations of an entire group. Median is the answer with an entire data set. Mode is the most common answer, and the first standard deviation represents the amount by which 68% of participants answered away from the mean. For example, for previous self-efficacy's mean is 4.36 and the standard deviation is 0.5. This means that for participants in Table 1, there are 68% participants responded between 3.86 and 4.86. In other words, 4.36 plus or minus 0.5. Standard deviation is good for judging how similar participants' self-evaluations were. The table for you is just a snippet of the entire Table 1, which is rather long. Hence, I'll spare the eye straining and only list the noteworthy differences. Over 90% of all participants reported positive self-evaluations in all 4 characteristics. Males and current 58 over-year-olds had higher general self-esteem. 17 to 18-year-old high school graduates had higher career-oriented self-efficacy. Current 17 and 37-year-olds had lower general self-esteem. And the February to April birth month group had lower general career-oriented self-efficacy. It's important to note that the differences between demographic characteristics only differed by half a point, and the standard deviation for all statistical differences was also roughly half a point. Therefore, all statistical differences within Table 1 were most likely caused by chance. Additionally, there was no recurring pattern or disparity in scores between Table 1 to suggest any presence of the relative age effect. Also grouped by demographic, Table 2 displays correlational analysis between all subgroups, self-evaluated characteristics, and high school graduation age. My function defined relative age. No significant correlational R value was observed in the total for any demographic, except for the May-Li group and high school self-efficacy, with a correlational R value of 0.467. The majority of non-significant, all other correlational values were either minimal or insignificant. The majority of non-significant R values in figure 2 hold no evidence of the presence of the relative age effect. The May-Li group may have a significant correlation between high school self-efficacy and high school graduation age, but the overall lack of significant correlations within this month or any other subgroup indicates no logical explanation. Finally, figure 3 is a table analyzing the correlations between the self-evaluated characteristics, high school graduation age, and current age. More significant correlations were observed in red between general self-efficacy and high school self-efficacy, and in purple between general self-esteem and general self-efficacy. Lesser significant correlational R values were found between general self-efficacy and career-oriented self-efficacy, and current age and general self-esteem. Most importantly, figure 3 indicates that graduation age has no significant correlation with any other self-evaluated characteristic, which is evidence in line with figures 1 and 2. My main goal is to investigate how does being older or younger compared to classroom peers affect subsequent adult success and satisfaction in their careers. The lack of any significant statistical difference or correlation within tables 1, 2, and 3 indicate that students' relative age compared to their peers has little effect on adults' ultimate success in their careers. The benefit of discovery is that, if true, there should be little reason for parents that withhold academic entry or redshirt students in hopes of garnering a hidden academic advantage, and certain risks involved with academic redshirting are minimized. If redshirting is not important to an adolescent's academic success, the decision to redshirt may seem overly important to parents, which could overshadow more important decisions, like consulting a kindergarten teacher or recognizing whether your student needs academic accommodations. At the very least, the experiment's conclusions eliminates one possible factor for students' long-term academic success, paving the way for more focused research. However, more studies are needed to confidently assert whether the relative age is really unrelated to vocational outcomes, and the study itself has a set of limitations that need to be addressed. The first limitation was the current age range of the participants. The diversity of age within my participants equates to a wide range of educational practices and career environments. It could be that educational opportunities or the start of the school year could have changed within the generation of my participants, ultimately skewing the results of my survey. Another limitation was whether the participants were experiencing mood congruent memory bias, which is the tendency to remember events congruent with one's current mood more easily. It could be that participants' current general self-efficacy influenced their own memories of their ability to succeed in high school. This would also explain the high correlation between general self-efficacy and high school self-efficacy. Finally, coronavirus disease trend 19 and the uneven birthday distribution could have had unforeseeable effects on the result of my survey. To shed more light on the relationship between academic relative age and adult self-evaluated characteristics, additional research should be done. Possible topics include investigating the social effects relative age has on developing students and what other schools should focus on to enhance student success. A subsequent experiment involving the same variables could be conducted longitudinally with a large set of kindergarten kids growing into adults. This longitudinal method will eliminate many limitations my experiment had, like mood congruent memory bias and the uneven participant distribution. In any case, I'm happy my research draws attention to the little-known subject of relative age in education. I look forward to future research about more factors that may ultimately affect students' long-term academic success. These are my references. Thank you for listening to my presentation. I'm now ready for any further questions.
How do the choices you made when designing or implementing your research method impact your research process?
Well, the core question my research attempts to address is what is the relative age's effect on vocational and general self-evaluations. Therefore, results concerning the general correlations between vocational self-efficacy and relative age were the most important. I determined how I was going to analyze my relationship by turning towards my literature review. All of my review papers use correlational analysis for their methods because they gave a strength and significance to two variable relationships. I wanted to create a general and credible experiment conclusions, hence my decision to follow the examples set by my mentor text. To do correlational analysis, I need quantifiable data. The entire reason that my paper is centered around self-report surveys is because the surveys reported data on a 5-point Likert scale, thereby granting me the ability to do correlational analysis.
How do your findings provide directions for future research in the field?
My research acts as a precursory experiment to new experiments. In other words, because my research eliminates relative age as a significant factor toward a student's vocational success, future research can focus on other variables towards the question, how do we make our students more successful? My research also offers resources and directions in the form of my method. If future research wants to affirm my conclusion as a foundation toward future research about how do we make our students more successful, they can easily reference my adaptive survey and method for correlational analysis.
Think back to the initial curiosity that sparked your inquiry. What other curiosities do you have, and how was this process prepared you to explore them?
My initial curiosity concerning academic or vocational success actually included more than just the relative age effect. I want to investigate other factors like familial economics, neighborhood placement, and gender and race. The sheer scope of the variables I wanted to study was overwhelming, so I ultimately decided on one. My research process taught me detailed planning and ethical sensitivity. Both skills are very useful when investigating sensitive participant demographics. If I were to continue to research my other research queries, I'm sure I could design an experiment that evaluates correlations amongst my sensitive demographic without endangering them. Thank you.